So I just wanted to commend the center for this discussion. The States hasn't. States, I don't think we've engaged the question as much as they have in Europe, and this is a pretty good panel with lots of opposing views. And I'm more on the Danny side of the ledger, and I'll.
Blame the journalists. Why not?
Yes, I will. So, right, and I think I sense a disconnect. You know, there is obviously a disconnect between financial journalism and its critics, us. I also sense one between the financial journalism and the broader public, and I think that's more worrisome. We started at the Columbia Journalism Review. We wanted to sort of solve the basic question, sort of what gives with the press in this financial crisis, and we started with we tried to be unjournalistic about it and be actually systematic. But we started with the observation that we were looking at a financial system that had collapsed, caused basically or essentially by an out-of-control financial sector. The debate then ensued. Between journalists and again its critics, what was the role of financial journalists in the institutional response from business journalists was that we did. And I think Mark represented it quite well. We did cover it. Just the public wasn't paying attention, and I find logical problems with that in the sense that essentially shifts responsibility to readers to respond to react and to solve the crisis on their own. But a bit more deeply, it struck us that this question about what financial journalism did and didn't do, what was and wasn't said, is not strictly speaking, a matter of opinion. You know, the record is the record. The question, the problem is it's so voluminous. So what we tried to do is what we actually did do is systematically sit down and read the record of the nine major business publications, including Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fortune, including Bloomberg, Financial Times, and all the ones that you know. We read it over a period of 2000 to mid-2007, and we just wanted to find out what was said. Again, we sort of went in with with bad intent in the sense that we knew that there already was a problem. The main beat of financial journalism had just melted down to China, and everyone, to the shock of one and all. So what was missing? What we found was an interesting sort of pattern, and what the bottom line on it was actually what was missing were stories that confronted powerful financial institutions while they were still powerful about their basic business practices. We all know today, but it wasn't a secret then, that predatory lending and that basically the mortgage lending system in the United States was out of control. It was out of control as foreclosures rose in the early part of the decade, and it only got worse from 2003 onward. I don't, I think you can divide the problem of this crisis into two pieces for me. One is the mortgage market, and then the second is the aftermarket. The aftermarket is more opaque. It is more esoteric. It's more difficult to get your arms around, but the mortgage market problems were a clear and present danger. And yet, you could read all day, and we did, and find stories about everything but an out-of-control mortgage lending system. And I think what was important, and this is all sort of, we charted all this, and you can look it up. We put together a database of the stories. If you Google CJR, the list, there's 730 stories up there, and we tried to highlight and color code things so that you could see what was useful and relevant, what was a true investigative story about bad actors and bad practices, what was a useful but not necessarily sufficient warning about housing prices or defective mortgage products from a consumer point of view, and what was sort of the run-of-the-mill, which was stories that we found essentially irrelevant. If you go back over the period and sort of, it's an interesting exercise, I'll tell you, to go back in time and read forward, because you know the ending, and you're putting yourselves in the shoes of people who are trying to weave their way through this. But you'll see stories that I think, again, this is sort of it is a blame game, and we're all sort of pointing fingers, but it's really not about that. So what now? How do we think about financial journalism going forward? So when you sort of think about Wall Street coverage during this period, as we sort of say in the story, you look at it, it's not relevant to what the main practices was going on. Putting muscle back in the bowl. Stan O'Neill may be the toughest, some say most ruthless CEO in America. Merrill Lynch couldn't be luckier to have him. Fortune, 2004. Rewiring Chuck Prince. City's chief hasn't just stepped out of Sandy Wells' shadow, he stepped out on his own as he strives to make himself into a leader with vision. Business Week, February 2006. Joining the club inside Goldman's secret right, the race to become a partner, Wall Street Journal. October 2006. Lehman's new street smarts. Under CEO Fuld, the bond house. Listen, it's not about, again, these stories, and I find them all interesting. They're interesting at the time, and they're good. What I'm, I guess, arguing is that in the American journalism tradition, and this is the one I came out of, we have a long and established, and I think proud strain of investigative reporting. It's not just a practice, it's sort of a way of life, and it's a way of thinking. And it's accountability orientation, and it's arm's length, and it relies not on access, but on outside voices, documents, dissidents, whistleblowers, ex-employees, and customers who are suing. I think what happened in this period was that tradition in the US, and I can't speak for Europe, but that tradition in business journalism existed. I know it did because I was part of it, and I believe it firmly it was marginalized during this period at the worst possible time. And there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of reasons for it. Again, the financial problems in the media sector as well. Deregulation was a huge problem, but this trend is real, and the record shows it. That's what I have to say. Thanks.
I will touch back on that again in a few minutes. Dean, thank you so much, Dean Starkman.